Canon versus Nikon versus Sony. We're going to be talking about the battle for the future of cameras. It's that serious.
Yeah, you've probably picked your team, so we're going to find out if they're ahead and how they're going to do in 2025.
I think that this is actually a pretty practical debate. You want to know which camera company you're going to invest in and buy into. And I know we're mentioning the top three. We're also going to talk a little bit about Fujifilm and a little bit about Hasselblad and DJI. But first, we want to talk about our sponsor, Squarespace. They make this podcast possible, but they also make easy websites possible. So if you want your own website with your own domain, you can try it for free for 14 days. And once you're there, you can set up your pictures or whatever other website you want, but you can schedule appointments, you can take payments, you can sell your crafts or your wares, you can show your menus if you have a restaurant. Everything is possible when you have a Squarespace. So try it out. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. Thanks, Squarespace.
Okay, what about everybody else? Like, what about Fujifilm and Panasonic and OM and Leica and Pentax?
I think all these brands are super important. I'm not trying to disrespect them. I'm just focusing on the big three. And it was pretty thorough research. And quite frankly, I think it would have taken too long to do all of them.
You know what? If you tuned into the Super Bowl, you weren't like, well, where are the Patriots? Where are the Cowboys?
No, actually,
well, guess what? They're not one of the top ones. So these are just the top companies that we're going over.
Tony, people were like that. Okay, so let's start with a Nikon. Oh, I was a Nikon shooter for a long time. We're going to start with talking about Nikon's sales. And the good news is that they're saying that their sales in the imaging department is up.
Well, that's a relief,
good.
Right? Because it was just, what was it, 2020 when there were rumors of their bankruptcy that we had to cover?
Okay, well, this is the thing now that you bring it up. So I went into the financial reports of Canon, Nikon, and Sony, and one thing that I discovered is that like the information is broken out differently between the three companies. So like one of them, imaging, might also cover printers or something. So it's really difficult to pick apart the sales. And I think it's by design. They're working the numbers for everything to look as profitable as possible. So we're going to just take that information with a grain of salt. Like they're up or they're down. They're up. So that's good. In 2023, they released the Z8 and the ZF, which were two really popular cameras, and they got reviewed well. So that was great.
Okay, but it was 2 years ago.
Well, yeah, but the financials were between like 2023 to 2024.
Oh, I see. That's why their finances.
Yeah, that's why their finances are good. So that's what I'm justifying. And even though the Z9 was released in like 2021, they were still doing firmware updates last year in 2024. So I consider it like a new camera every time because it's not the same camera we reviewed when it first came out.
Yeah, we panned it when it was launched, and we ended up giving it the Camera of the Year award in 2023. Because they had so many firmware updates. It was just a different camera that deserved the title.
I think that's a testament to like the quality of their firmware updates and also to our ability to change our minds. In 2024, they also acquired Red Cinema cameras, and with it, the patent to the global shutter and a bunch of video technology. So all of this is good for their investors and their financial reports and the health of the imaging department.
Yeah, last time we did this, we really were critical of Nikon for being the only company in the big three to not have a cinema camera division. And they addressed that. They fixed it. Suddenly they have cinema cameras. Now, have we seen a lot of results from that yet? No.
It's new.
But it's going to take a couple of years.
Yeah, it's a new merger, but they definitely have plans for that.
But this is largely about the direction. Their direction is good.
Yeah, the direction's good.
Yeah.
I want to talk about innovation. So I'm going to be talking about like the sales, the innovation, the popularity of all these companies. And the innovation that I think Nikon really brings to the table at this point is these big beefy firmware updates where you can buy a camera and then years later it's a far better camera for free.
Yeah.
That I would be incredibly happy if I were a Nikon shooter. That's really nice. They could have held back all that tech and made you buy another camera, and they didn't. Canon would have done that.
Yeah. A lot of people are critical for Sony. They just launched this new camera, and it seems like it's mostly just a firmware update.
Yeah. Well, they're in a little bit of a different position, so I guess you do what you can.
Well, let's talk about that. Nikon, of these three, is definitely in third place as far as sales go.
Yeah.
But that is often a good thing for the consumer. Often, the company that's further behind has less to lose. They will throw everything in to get some market share, to get your sale. Canon and Sony, they're leading. They are actually afraid if they put too many features in this camera, they won't be able to sell the next camera. Or they will cannibalize their more expensive cinema cameras. So Canon and Sony both are holding features back. Nikon didn't take that approach.
No,
they gave us everything they could possibly think of, everything they could cram in there.
Listen, their company has changed so much. When we reviewed the Z6 in like, what was it, 2018?
Yeah, the original.
The original, it was bad. It
Yeah.
was bad. We said it, and I'm sorry that we made you mad, okay, but we told you a difficult truth. Their cameras are in a completely different place right now. They're excellent. Their autofocus is excellent.
Yeah.
Their functionality is excellent. Their styling is now excellent in cameras like their ZF. So I am so happy to see the direction they're moving in. And also, they're going to be merging with Red, so we're going to have better Nikon video coming out. They're moving everything in a way better direction and expanding their market. I think as far as popularity goes, they hold down their place in the market because they have a long, rich history and they have a dedicated fan base. So you're a part of that, of keeping them going.
It's crazy how many people own Nikon cameras, because we always talk about what did they sell in the last year. But think about what did they sell in the last 70 years.
Yeah.
Like the F-mount originated in the 50s. And so many people have bought those cameras over the last 70 years, and they became attached to the Nikon brand. And when they think about what camera should I get, they think, oh, I had a Nikon, my grandpa had a Nikon, whatever. Nikon has become part of the culture. It is synonymous with cameras.
It's synonymous with quality as well. Like if you're into cameras, you probably have people asking you questions about cameras all the time. Well, me too. And people will ask me how much their Nikon camera from the 70s is worth, because it's a Nikon. It's quality, right? So people have this idea that it's a good brand, and it is. I also think that as far as popularity goes, they're capturing another part of the market. They're like cashing in on this brand value and on their heritage by putting out a camera like the ZF, which is their vintage looking digital camera, and it sold really well and it made people happy. Did we have complaints? Of course. That's like pretty much what we do. Okay, literally our job. But we still liked it, and people loved it, and that's what matters.
I agree with the strategy. Like every company should be releasing beautiful retro cameras. I nitpicked some parts of the execution.
Yeah, but you know, nitpicking will keep them on their toes a little bit. I want to talk about the future of Nikon. I think that it's bright. I think it's great for the consumers. I went on Nikon rumors, as you do, and it's rumored that there's going to be a Nikon Z video camera and also Nikkor cinema lenses. So they're going to be using...
Seems like, of course, right? Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. And then they've already confirmed that they're planning to put Red's video tech into a camera. And I think it's possibly the Z9 too.
That's good, but I will say that's a small part of the market. And even the cinema camera market, not a growing industry. It's a tough industry to be in, and Red was struggling when they bought them. Something Nikon really hasn't approached is like even a proper vlogging camera.
Well,
like that's a space, a lot of Canons, a lot of Sonys, a lot of DJIs. I don't see anybody using Nikon for that. And my own tests have shown they're not really great at that segment.
But the thing is, once they have good video capability in a stills camera, they're going to be capturing the part of the market where all the reviewers are. And that's important, that people will feel like they can get a good stills camera and still vlog or make video when they want to.
Yeah, even just the brand equity of Red, like people know Red. And if you're picking up a vlogging camera for yourself, even if it's $500, if it had some Red branding on there, you'd think, oh, okay, well, this is going to be, I'm going to be like Scorsese here.
Yeah, that's what people think. I think that they're making really good moves. I see a very hopeful future for them, which I was concerned about a few years ago. So, yeah, happy for Nikon. Let's move on to Canon.
Probably the biggest camera manufacturer. Certainly the most cameras in existence are Canon cameras, because they've been number one since the 80s, since really Andre Agassi and the mullet and the EOS whole format. Like
there was a commercial where
Canon
Andre
past Nikon.
Agassi was advertising Canon, yeah. Their sales are up, so that's great. Same quarters, 2023 to 2024. And I think that's impressive for all of these companies, because like the camera segment in general is going down, you know, everybody's shooting on their smartphones. And so I'm just really happy that they're seeing good sales despite everything going on. They cite their new R1 and the R5 II for their like big innovations and their important new models. But I'll say like The R1, reviewers were pretty disappointed in it.
Yeah, I didn't even bother to pick one up to review because like it didn't seem like it had any innovations to test. Like I always like to test out the new features, and both those cameras like didn't have a lot of new features.
Yeah, but the thing is, like the YouTube camera world is in this bubble where we're looking for the new exciting features because that makes a good review, right? And also we're really familiar with the tech, so we want something new all the time.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that even though the R1, the initial launch didn't seem exciting, it went on to sell really well. And that's because the professionals using it are just going to upgrade to the next thing. It's like they're not searching around to change their whole system. They had the past one, they're buying the next one. And if you look at an Olympic event, it's like mostly Canon stuff, right? So these professionals, they're just buying the next thing. It did well, even though it excited not many people.
Yeah,
But
Canon had the most gear at the Super Bowl, they determined. So they're still doing really well with that. And the fact is that that sports guy you see on the sideline of the sporting event, when his camera finally breaks, or he needs to shoot silently or something, that person is going to just go get the new Canon.
Yeah.
They're not going to look up reviews of the global shutter and the A9 Mark III and how does that, they're just going to say, oh, hey, what's the newest Canon? I'll get that one.
probably.
It's
And
that easy of a choice.
then the R5 Mark II came out, and that was a little more exciting. They'd updated some things, and they almost eliminated rolling shutter. I was able to get a little rolling shutter out of it because I really pushed it.
Yeah.
But still, they made some progress with that, and that was a really solid camera. But I think what does even better for them is that they come out with something like the R100, and it's like a $600 kit. And people are getting into this professional Canon system for an affordable price.
And people are constantly asking us which camera they should buy. Like, not on YouTube, but real world. They'll find out we're photographers and like, oh, I wanted to get a camera. What should I get? And I really ponder it. And I ask them about their requirements, what their budget is. And nowadays, almost 100% of the time, I'm telling them to get one Canon or another. It could be one of the entry-level APS-C cameras, or often it's a Canon R8 or even a Canon RP. Because Sony and Nikon don't really have well-rounded, all-purpose cameras at those price points.
Well, so, yeah, you're right.
We're talking cameras with viewfinders, cameras with good autofocus that can do good stills and video, shoot some sports. Like the R8, like $1,300 for a full-frame camera that's super capable and just sort of works out of the box with no configuration?
I did just recommend an R8 to our neighbor. But I will say, like, Sony has the capability, but I find that the form factor is off-putting to people who aren't into photography.
Yeah.
I don't care. I think that all the capabilities are there and it's a smaller form factor, but people that don't know a lot about cameras think that they want their camera to look pro, even though, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? And so that makes a difference. So when I've recommended like a entry-level Sony to people, they're kind of like, I kind of want like a pro camera.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, if you were buying a sports car, would you buy a sports car that was very fast but looked exactly like a minivan? Or would you want something that looked like a little bit like a race car?
Wait, you're blowing my mind. I kind of want the super fast minivan just for shock value.
Yeah.
No, but you make a point, like, yeah, people want their camera to look more professional than it is. And if you don't know a lot about cameras, that's just like whatever is on the sidelines, whatever that looks
Well,
like.
you saw your wedding photographer using. The entry-level Canons look like that. The entry-level Sonys, they're a little boxy. They look
smaller.
a little gadgety.
Yeah. As far as innovation goes, like I said, they managed to almost eliminate the rolling shutter in the R5 too. They came out with a global shutter for their cinema line. So neat. Doesn't apply to me, but that's cool. But I think their biggest achievement is what we're talking about, is that they have really good entry-level cameras like the full-frame R8 or the APS-C R7 and R10, really capable cameras, easy to use and at a good price point. So they're getting people into the system, and that matters.
Yeah, and I actually think they're offering cameras at such a low price point by taking them as loss leaders, knowing that if they sell this, they can sell some lenses down the line. And they can do that better than Sony, especially because they don't let anybody else produce autofocus lenses for their full-frame cameras. So if they sell a full-frame camera, they're forcing you to buy more Canon cameras, but that means that they come in at a lower price point, and that makes them more attractive for the first time buyer. But then you're going to pay later. You're going to get locked into the
Well,
system. But that's kind of business innovation.
yeah,
I
they're
don't love
like,
it as a consumer.
you can get in cheap, but you're going to pay later. If you decide you're into this,
Yeah.
you're stuck paying a lot for lenses. Yeah. That, or actually people often end up frustrated because they'll just buy incompatible gear and then ask us what's wrong.
I've seen so many like APS-C lenses on full frame cameras. Oh, it's so
And we're
confusing.
like, I'm sorry. When I try to explain cameras to
Yeah.
people, I'm like, I'm so sorry that this is hard. The popularity, of course, they're number one in sales. They just came out and said that they're number one in full frame mirrorless, which is like punching Sony in the throat. I really feel like maybe they're just being antagonistic.
They're being so catty about it.
I know.
But I guarantee you within the next day or two, you'll see Sony saying they're number one. And
I just feel like they all just slice the numbers in like very specific ways to be number one, which I relate to. I've done that.
but it's close enough.
Whatever.
It's close, yeah.
They're doing well. So what about the future of Canon? I think it's going to just be like pretty predictable.
I wish I could make some big clickbait thing like, you won't believe what's coming next, but I think we'll believe what's coming next. I think it'll be, we're going to increment some numbers. We'll see.
I've seen your clickbait. Don't sell yourself short. You could make a meal of a couple bites.
Yeah. We'll see R6.3, R7.2. They'll be slightly faster,
What about a
higher
global?
frame rates.
What about a global shutter for a stills camera?
I don't think that's coming anytime soon, if ever. Sony did that with the A9 Mark III.
Yeah.
And it was exciting at the time, but I don't hear a lot about that. And it came with some serious drawbacks. And the R1 got a quick readout speed, but not instant, but dialed back some of the drawbacks, and it was a bit of a compromise. But that seems fine. I also don't see people complaining about the readout speed on the R1. So I don't know that Canon, they're so practical.
But what about bigger numbers?
Yeah, I feel like Sony is still very much caught up in the like bigger number, outdoing the
Well, 'cause
competitor
they
thing.
wanna,
but
like,
Canon
be-
doesn't seem to care that much.
They want to be on the cutting edge. I think
Yeah.
that Canon has this stronghold with the professionals and like the beginners. I'd like to see them do something fun. Do y'all have fun?
Please be fun,
They're-
Canon. Oh my God.
What would be fun to you?
I mean, a camera that didn't look like every camera that they've produced since the 80s, which is just like a black SLR looking thing. They all look the same. Could you please give me a ZF style camera? Like give me a retro AE1 camera.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
I'm not giving Canon enough credit because they have done some innovations in form factors, like that little birding
Oh, yeah, that was
monocular,
cool.
and they had like a vlogging camera in an interesting form
Mm-hmm.
factor. So they are doing some experimentation, to be fair. It's just none of their experiments have really resonated with us, particularly.
We're a little self-centered. Sorry,
Yeah.
Ken. Sorry. But you know what we do love is Squarespace. We both have our own websites. We have several, actually. I put my pictures there, and I try to outdo myself by putting my next best one. It's a place where you can showcase your work, but you can also book appointments. You can have your calendar there for your clients. You can there's a payment place where they can make payments for their appointments. So anything you can imagine you need for your business, Squarespace makes it possible, and it does it in a really clean, professional, and modern way. You don't have to take my word for it. You can just try it for 14 days, and you don't have to remember to cancel. It will just expire if you don't want it anymore. Drag and drop your pictures in, move them around, see how much fun it is, and when you decide you want it, which you will, you can use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. That's squarespace.com/Chelsea, and then Chelsea for 10% off. That's CHELSEA, like the football team.
As a nerd, what I appreciate about Squarespace is zero maintenance.
Yeah.
I never have to mess with it. Like every other gadget in my life, it's like constantly like installing updates or realizing that something is broken. I've never had no updates on my Squarespace, never breaks or goes down.
That's so true.
It has continued to work for 11 years now. My website has been up. As far as I know, it's just been 100%. Incredible in this day and age to have something that you don't have to mess with.
It is nice. It's just reliable and easy.
Speaking of pain in the butt updates, Sony. I just had to update a couple of my
whoa.
Sony cameras. You don't understand. I got to pull like an old PC laptop that I have and like get a USB cable and connect it. And then it's like on the order of 15 minutes to update the firmware.
Why don't you do what I do?
Never install an update.
You don't
and just
install
wait for stuff to
updates.
break and then be like, Tony, my camera broke.
I never install updates and then I wait for my whole life to fall apart.
Yeah.
And then I retire in Key West and I never go back.
I should say Sony has improved their updates, but if you have an older camera, it's still a pain. But they're making progress.
Let's talk about their sales. Their sales are down a little bit, but I want to offer an explanation. In 2023, they released so many cameras. They released like 6 or 7 or something, and they were all under $3,000. We had like the ZV-E10, the ZV-1, 2 vlogging cameras. We had the Sony A6700. We had the A7C2. So we had a bunch of cameras that were under $3,000 and probably sold a bunch. In 2024, they released more expensive cameras. So they had the Alpha 1 II, which is $6,500, and the Alpha 9 III, which was $5,000. They're more niche-y, more professional, higher in price, so probably lower sales. Also, the Alpha 9 III didn't ship for a while, right?
Yeah, it did take a little bit, yeah.
But anyway, just offering an explanation. I don't think that this like reduction in sales is like catastrophic or anything. It's small. And we see that their release cycles are like every other year, every couple of years. So what I'm predicting is actually 2025, they're going to have more camera releases, probably like 5. And I think one of them is going to be the A7 IV,
Yeah.
which should sell really well for them because the A7 IV was one of their top selling cameras. It was a $2,500 camera, so more approachable price range. And also like very versatile. So I think that 2025 will be a good year for them.
Yeah, we're going to be buying an A1 Mark II or maybe 2. And I'm really hoping to see an A5, like a lower end product to compete with all those Canons that we keep recommending to people.
Yeah. Innovations with Sony, they come last. So we've already talked about them quite a bit.
But they're really the leader in innovation. Like they make sensors for everybody except for Canon. Mm-hmm. And they had the global shutter in the A9 Mark III, which was the biggest innovation that we've really seen in the last 5 years. Like it was a big innovation.
That was exciting.
Yeah.
I also think that this is kind of how they got their foothold because they were the first to the full frame mirrorless game. Mm-hmm. And they got this head start because Canon and Nikon really, I don't know if you remember, but they were quite rude about it. They were calling their cameras toys. People were pretty disrespectful towards Sony as a serious contender for cameras.
Yeah,
and
until everybody started selling their DSLRs and switching over to the A7 III toy.
Yeah, and it just showed that the mirrorless platform was allowing capabilities that couldn't be done in a DSLR. So they were ahead of the game, and I think that that's their approach, is to try to innovate and get ahead and make it work and make everyone else chase them. I'm not sure that the global shutter was that, but we may find out that it was. We don't know their long-term plans.
It can be an advantage or a disadvantage to be the first. So let's talk about the business term, which is the innovator's dilemma. Think of the company TiVo. Do you remember TiVo? Like blink blink? It was like the first, what we call the DVR. It would just record your TV shows.
I think it was like bloop bloop.
Oh, better sound effect. But they basically went out of business. Even though they innovated that, they were the first to market. They tested it out. They got people familiar with the concept of that product, and then everybody else figured out how to do it cheaply without having to go through all the tech, because you could just reverse engineer everything that they had done. That happens a lot in the camera industry too. A company will float out a new tech and they have to pay more to be the first to market. If it's popular, the other companies just copy it at a fraction of the development price. And they don't have to teach people that this is a particularly useful feature, like eye detect autofocus. They don't have to explain why you need that because people already know. Because that innovator paid all those fees. And if it flops, well, the innovator takes the whole hit. And the other companies never have to invest in it at all. So it can be bad. And like you said, by innovating full frame mirrorless, Sony really won, took a huge amount of market share. I'm not sure the innovation of the global shutter is going to go that same direction. I'm not sure that's ever going to pay itself off. You know, it came with a bunch of downsides. I don't see a lot of people using A9 Mark IIIs
What was the downside?
Dynamic range, image quality, base ISO.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, the images, like if you looked closely, the images just weren't as good.
It's more like a niche tool.
And it's fine for most people.
But I
at
think
the same time,
I think even if it's not the right tool for somebody, it shows what Sony is capable of with innovation. So I'm in the Sony system. That's perhaps why I'm being critical of it. It's like you criticize what you love. But I know that they're going to come out with new tech that's impressive to me, even if I don't necessarily use it. And so I like that about them.
Yeah, I think if you're a techie and you like to see a constant stream of new stuff that you can
Yeah.
buy, Sony's probably the best system to be in.
I will-
Followed by Nikon, with Canon in last place for that.
I will say that I thought that they had a bigger advantage because they also had their phones and their drones. And I haven't heard a ton about their phones and their drones.
So we used to review every new Sony Xperia smartphone, specifically for the cameras. But last year they stopped even bringing them to the US. Like their flagship Xperia 1.6 didn't come to the US. And that's not a good sign because the US is a pretty big smartphone market. And in 2023, I see the number that phone sales dropped 40%. So I don't know that they'll be making phones for that much longer, which is too bad because they made great Android phones. And in previous years, when we did this comparison, the drones were a huge advantage because Sony was the only one who had conventional cameras, cinema cameras, smartphone cameras, and drones. And the combination of these things really painted a bright future for them, where they could do lots of crossovers, like high-end cameras on drones, or take their smartphone tech and put it into drones or into conventional cameras. Smartphones seem to be disappearing. The drones have been discontinued. They'll be discontinued in March of 2025, next month. And that's too bad that those two markets are going away.
Yeah.
So now they're more of a conventional camera company that happens to make movies and stuff too, like Sony Pictures.
Happens to make movies. I think like
It's still
when I
a-
look
a
at their
benefit, but-
financials, like there's other things making more money than the imaging department. But yeah.
But I still think they're committed. They still make like sensors for iPhones, I think. Like they're deeply
Yeah,
in
they
the
do.
industry. They're not going anywhere, for sure. They're stable and they're going to be here and they're going to be innovating hard.
I think that's why, as far as popularity goes, they've managed to keep their competitive edge. People are still excited about any Sony product that's launching in the camera world.
Yeah.
And I think that they do have that reputation for innovation. Their sales are strong, even though they had this small drop. I think we're going to see it go up this year because of new products. But I'll say when I look at like worldwide search patterns, they don't have the same searches as Canon cameras.
Yeah.
Canon's still what people associate with cameras.
I think Sony should take some more risks.
Really?
Yeah. Like they just released as like another version of the 85 f1.4 that I wish could have been an 85 f1.2.
Oh,
Like let's make some
Oh,
interesting
that's a
lenses. Let's make an Android camera. Let's take some chances. I know
still-
I'm always on about that.
you're always going on about the Android camera.
Somebody's going to give it. I got an Android camera coming. It's in the mail. I ordered one of the Yongno Android cameras.
You did?
Yep. It's on the way.
Okay.
We're making it happen. If I have to force
Okay.
it.
Oh my gosh, he's really pushing this Android camera. All right, let's talk about a brand weakness that we see with Sony. This is not really their fault, but I think that when you think of Canon, you specifically think of cameras. I know they make like medical equipment and
Printers,
stuff. They make
yeah.
printers, but that's not what people think of. And when you think of Nikon, you definitely think of cameras first, or if you're an optometrist, maybe you think of your little thing.
That's what I think of, yeah.
But Sony started as an electronics company. Actually, if you go back to our video on the Sony history, they started with an electric rice cooker.
That's the first thing I think of when you say
Really?
Sony. Rice maker.
Do you really?
No, I think Walkman
Okay.
because I'm a child of the 80s.
Okay. Well, I think cameras because I'm in the camera world, but I do think people associate them with like their TVs or other electronics. And so you put it in a good way. It's like a reverse association as well. When you're thinking, what camera should I buy? You might automatically think Canon, even though it's not the best option for you.
Yeah, and when we say you, we don't mean you. Because you're watching a YouTube photography channel. We mean mom and dad, grandpa, the consumers out
The
there
royal
buying
we.
their first. Yeah. Civilians.
I think that they could help this by getting that nostalgia going, like Canon and Nikon did for the
Yeah.
future generation. And that's why I really think they need a camera that appeals to a younger generation that's like more affordable, easier to use. Think like photography student in a class or something, or like mom and pop at the soccer field. And I just don't see that with them right now. So I'd love to see them come out with something more approachable, more affordable, and capable, and start digging in that nostalgia. I think that's a big project that I'm throwing out there with no knowledge of how to do it, but it just seems necessary.
I wish we could just like mate Fuji and Sony Like, because Fuji has such like passion for form over function.
Yeah.
And Sony is always so practical. And I would love to just see some merging of that.
Like, Sony is the you and Fuji is the me. Because you're like
Okay.
the highly technical, specky person, and I'm just really cute.
Don't say
That's
just.
not what it was. That's not what I was gonna say. Like, I'm the more artsy one, is what I was actually gonna say. But yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, there could be a little synergy. I don't think that's gonna happen. So I hate to break another dream after the Android camera thing, but I don't think Fuji and Sony are gonna do a merger.
I agree.
It'd be a great news story for you, though.
Yeah.
You should just make it up.
I should. Why not?
So the future of Sony, I think they're just going to be solid. I see that A7 IV coming out. I think it's going to sell really well. I think that they might put their global shutter tech into an FX camera. That's their video line, their cinema line. And then that would compete with Canon and Nikon. And then some people speculate, Sony rumors speculates that they might go upmarket with a medium format camera. And I think that could be interesting.
Why not? Like, they don't need to make any more E-mount lenses. I feel like they've got so many out there. I definitely think they have the bandwidth to make a medium format camera. They make the sensors already.
Yeah.
So they could use their medium format cameras as the platform to launch the next big high resolution sensor. And as we've been shooting with medium format, like, it is better.
Oh, man, those Hasselblad pictures are beautiful.
Right?
But what about going down market as well? Do you think we'll get that trendy camera that I want for the youngins and the...
No. I want them to, but do I see it? No.
I don't see it either. I could dream a little dream over here. Before we talk about who's winning in the three, we want to also loop in like DJI and Hasselblad, because they've been doing some things that we think could be big disruptors in the market, particularly in this top three.
Yeah, for this next year. Like, talking to other photography influencers, a lot of them have switched to Hasselblad. Partly because Hasselblad reached out and said, we will give you a free $10,000 camera if you start shooting with Hasselblad. It turns out that was an effective technique. And so a lot of the big influencers are shooting with Hasselblad, and that bodes well for their near-term future because so many people are seeing how cool the Hasselblads look.
It's
Now,
really
for the
cool.
record, we did not take the free Hasselblad.
But
I loved it so much, I went out and bought the CFE 100C and a set of lenses for myself. Even though I wouldn't take it free, I still loved it that much.
I know.
Because it's fantastic. And the other day, we took portraits of you in the studio, side by side, with a Sony A1 or something, a Sony A7 R6, and our Hasselblad. And neither one of us could figure out why the Hasselblad picture was so much better. Even though they should have been identical, like equivalent settings, the Hasselblad picture was better. And I don't know why.
We're still baffled.
There is something a little bit magical about it, but also they have this luxury feeling to them where the cameras are beautiful, they feel great in the hand. The software is vastly superior. They have internal storage, which nobody else can figure out for some reason.
Can I just mention a downside is that they're so expensive.
Right. But
And when that TSA agent was handling your Hasselblad and he was like, I was like, oh dear God, please, sir, please stop doing that with that.
so a lot of people will say that's way too expensive.
Yeah, it's
But
expensive.
do people realize how many sort of wealthy people there are in the world? Like, we live on the Connecticut shoreline, and if you drive past a marina, you will see 40 boats that cost more than $200,000. So if you talk about a camera that costs $10,000, as far as expensive hobbies go, it's not one of the more expensive hobbies. There are lots of people out there who can afford to spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 on a hobby, go to a car show, go to a marina. This luxury market is there, and Hasselblad is starting to take
True.
advantage of it.
True. You speak truth. And with DJI and Hasselblad having this synergy, they came out with
DJI mostly owns Hasselblad, it turns out.
They came out with the Pocket 3, which completely disrupted the vlogging market. People love it. It's stabilized, it's portable and small, and the image quality is great.
Yeah, us too. I use it all
We
the
use it
time.
all the time.
Whenever I need to travel light, and when I shoot side by side with that and like a big camera, nobody complains when they watch the video. The Pocket 3 results look great. It's
Those
just,
look
it's
really
fine.
good.
Yeah.
And also their mics, they have like the mics that go in with their system, so they have like this synergy and this cohesiveness in the system, which is locking people in. And now there's rumors that they're going to come out with a full frame camera. And if they build it from the ground up, like they did with the Pocket 3, like they've made some innovations on their mics, they're really creator forward. They're really thinking about the end user. I think they could come out with a camera that is your Android dream, basically.
I do predict that coming. And I want to say DJI's big advantage is they are willing to reinvent stuff. Whereas every Canon, Nikon, Sony camera is a refinement of the previous generation, going back to the 50s. It's always like small refinements, but they overall work the same.
They can't reinvent. Like they can't risk losing their existing audience. They can't, it costs so much money to like make the form factors, and their factories are already set up. That's why it's difficult to be a big company sometimes. It's hard to make a big change, especially they're beholden to shareholders that have been there for a long time. So yeah, I don't know. I understand
but DJI
the dilemma.
Can.
They can.
And that's why they're going to be a disruptor. Like, just think of the fact that the Pocket 3 is a vlogging camera that has a wireless mic receiver built in.
I am thinking of
But
that. That's why
nobody
I think
else,
cool.
Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fuji, nobody else has figured out how to do that, even though it's such an obvious and simple thing.
No, their
and it's
form
so
factors
practical and useful.
Are so fixed in the way that they were that like you pull the screen out to look at yourself when you're taking video and all the plugs go in that side. And then,
so you hook your microphone up and it's going in front of the screen that you need.
And then also you're looking to the side. So if you try to check yourself and check your levels, you're not looking in the lens. But if you put the flip screen on top, then it's blocked by the mic. You could put it in a cage, but now you're buying all this extra stuff. So there's just like this existing tradition of building the camera that's preventing things from being as easy to use.
It'd be so good if you could just reboot one of the big companies and just make them start over.
I don't know that
scratch.
it would be, but we could dream. Let's talk about Fujifilm too, because I want to acknowledge them because they're doing their own kind of thing and it's working out. And I find it baffling and interesting. They just sell so many of those Instax cameras.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it doesn't get counted. Like Canon's always bragging about camera sales, but I'm pretty sure Instax is just eating everyone's lunch. I don't have the numbers. I'll have to try to dig in. And then also they have the X100 series that they just can't even keep in stock. Like what is with that? Can they not make enough? Are they deliberately throttling the production to keep these things desirable? You could go back to an X100F or the original X100 and people still want them. And they're like 12 megapixels.
I remember you put out 3 cameras. It was like a Canon, a Sony, and your X105 or whatever. And you asked our daughter and niece, who are in their early 20s, which camera they would pick up. And they were both like, oh, the Fuji. Totally.
It's so
They don't have
cute.
to think about it. And the same with the Instax. I have all these cameras. None of them will use it. But if I put an Instax down, they will pick it up and they will use it.
Or the Camp Snap, which is like
They
a
love the
$70.
camps. I know, but the camera companies are so fixed in their tracks they can't figure this out. But Fuji figures it out. Fuji knows about the passionate side. Fuji really connects with young people. And
Like me. I have the X100 now. I had the X105. I love it. It doesn't make the best pictures. The fixed lens is not that great. I don't know what it is. It's just so fun to use and the pictures look aesthetically pleasing. But they have something figured out and I'd love to see someone else learn from that. Like Canon, I think, could learn from that. I think Nikon really did with the ZF. Sony, I'd love to see them learn from this. But like maybe you don't have to put so much money into developing new things. You can just like get a little sexy with it. I'd love to see it.
I know. I think Fuji is secretly the winner here. But of the big 3,
Yeah.
like who do you think is winning?
Oh, it's Canon.
Yeah, I think.
I mean,
right
like
now.
they're not my favorite because I have the Alpha 1 as the camera because I do wildlife, so I like the high frame rates and like the high resolution and everything. So like they're actually my favorite camera right now, but most people don't need all that because they're not going to be using like a 600 f4 lens, right? It's like, what's my lens, like $15,000? Who does that?
Yeah.
Most people are buying the entry level or like sub $2,000 cameras, and I think that that's where Canon's getting people. So yeah.
I think they have the best brand equity. I think Canon is synonymous with good, reliable cameras. They still have so much of the pro market that Sony is just desperately fighting for and making ingrounds, but Canon is still doing it kind of easily. And nowadays, I just keep recommending Canon cameras to people buying their first camera. And that's probably the best predictor of where things are going to be in 10, 20 years.
We should get like the entry level of each brand and test them out on these people.
Oh, just on actual civilians and see how they
Yeah,
connect
because
to
I
them?
want to see how people actually connect with the camera and what it feels like to them and how they perceive it at first glance, like do our own little study.
Oh, you know what would be so scary is if we said, take a picture and then share it on your phone.
What if we said,
And just let them figure
take
that
a
out.
picture and then show me how you retrieved that picture?
Yeah.
Because our daughter was into photography when she was younger, and then she'd have to like take out the memory card and put it in a computer, and she was like, I'm out.
Yeah, I'm done.
I'm done with this. Yeah. Crazy. Anyway, tell us your thoughts. How are you feeling? Are you okay? Did we insult you? Do you
Did
think
your
we're
team
wrong?
win?
Did your team win? Or do you hate us by proxy now? Thank you, Squarespace, for making this podcast possible. You should really check them out. I know you're probably tired of ads, but this is a good service and it can help you, and it's free to try it, so you can't lose. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea, use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off, and there you can see that they have an array of amazing features where you can book appointments, you can sell things in your online gallery, you can show off your best pictures and not just chronologically whatever pictures you took. It makes a lot of sense to have a website, and it makes you look professional. So thank you. And if you'd like to see more podcasts like this, check out our playlist, Picture This Photography podcast, or check us out wherever podcasts are available.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.